Previously on my channel, I set out to make the biggest pair of wings that has ever existed, and also the lightest pair of wings that has ever existed. I didn't manage to do either of those, but I did make a pretty light and pretty big pair of wings. But they weren't the biggest or the lightest that I think I can do. So I kind of have some unfinished business here that I couldn't quite leave alone. Hello, I'm Miss Twisted. You can call me Charlotte. I do cosplay and makeup and other weird and whimsical stuff. This time I'm doing a cosplay of Husk, and I want to make the wings even bigger. Is this over ambitious? God, absolutely. But I'm still kind of riding the success of the last ones, which is kind of giving me unrealistic expectations. So we're gonna ride that wave of cosplayer audacity right to the end. And hey, if all else fails, well, I probably wouldn't post this video. So if you're seeing this video, I got at least something right. Anyway, as I mentioned, I'm gonna be doing Husk for this one because I'm just not done yet with my Hazbin hotel fixation. Now, just before we get stuck in, I'm not quite feeling the black and white anymore. Let me see what I can do here with a splash of color. Ooh, this is more like it. Yes, today's video is sponsored by Pocket Styler. With an absolutely massive library of clothes, accessories, hairstyles, and more, including from real-world brands, you can express your creativity and submit your looks in various events alongside other real-world players to be voted on globally. My lovely character, the appropriately named Miss Twisted, is certainly making waves. Who knows, maybe you'll see her name in the leaderboards. Now, believe it or not, I got into cosplay from my interest in fashion, so I was incredibly impressed with the huge range this game has, from casual ensembles to bombastic and bold ball gowns. I kind of want to make some of these pieces in real life, to be honest. Speaking of making clothes, when you hit level 5, you get access to Pocket Styler Studio. This is genuinely such an impressive tool. You can design your own clothes, and I mean literally design them. Like, the customization in the studio is insanely detailed. For a cosplayer like myself, especially when I'm making an original design or adapting something 2D to real life, this is actually a really useful tool. Like, this is footage of a dress I designed myself to help me visualize an upcoming project. And check this out, once you've created your designs, you can put them in the game so other people can buy and style them, and you can earn in-game currency. So, Pocket Styler and Pocket Styler Studio are both completely free and available for iOS and Android. Click the link in the description box below or use the QR code on screen here to download Pocket Styler straight to your phone now and create your own style on the Pocket Styler Studio. Once you hit level 5 like me, I'll put the link to that one in the description below as well. Go check it out right now. In the meantime, as much as I'm absolutely loving the red right now, we're gonna change back just once more. You know, can't go wrong with the classic. All right, so step 1 is going to be getting a really nice, strong foundation for these wings. So that means the wing frame and the wing harness, all that sort of thing. And I'm pretty happy with what I did last time. So this is half of a sort of wood chip placemat that I bought from Bunnings. And I say half, I've obviously cut it very poorly. Please ignore that. Anyway, I have 2 of them, and my plan is I'm gonna glue these 2 together. I'm just doubling up because I think it'll provide just a little bit more strength for the wings. Like, placemats aren't really designed to be load-bearing, so to speak, but they've worked pretty well for me for a couple of different wings that I've made in the past, so we're just gonna do it again. So to hold this plank on my back, we're just using a backpack. It's literally just a backpack, except that I've cut the entire front part off and just kept like the straps and this lovely padded back panel. That way, essentially, once that's attached, I've got a nice bit of cushioning between this hard plank and my shoulder blades, and of course, they straps a little bit padded as well, so it should be relatively comfortable. If you're trying something like this for yourself, please check your local op shops first. You can usually get backpacks there for like $4 or $5. That's Australian dollars. I think in like freedom dollars, it would be like $2 to $3. And since you're cutting like most of the backpack off, it's really not worth spending any more than that. I have learned that these little tags at the top are actually incredibly useful, so keep those on because they are so good for like carrying your wings when they're off your shoulders. All right, wish me luck. I have a little tiny sheet metal screw, I think these ones are called. I'm poking this through from the other side of the backpack, through those layers, hopefully through this placemat. Ah, haha, gotcha. I've got a couple of these little tiny washers. I'm just gonna chuck one on there before I screw the nut over it.
Also, quick correction, these are bolts and not screws that I'm using. I continuously get these two mixed up.
I'm going to attach some hinges, and this is going to be where the wings actually attach. And last time I did use hinges. I had them tilted down a little bit here so that the wings were attached here, which meant that gravity kind of helped the wings always stay like out to the side as like the default position. But the only problem is that because they were hinged so much, gravity made it that I couldn't really pull them back with like any kind of string or anything. They only really do that like in the wind or if I'm going through a doorway. So I'm going to try and do this almost entirely like parallel to the top so that gravity doesn't really affect it one way or the other. They're pretty much going to be able to go backwards or to the side, depending on where I want them to sit. So yeah.
With the hinges secure, it's time to start building up the wing frame itself. So to start with, I'm going to be using some PVC piping, but I have heard some people say that it does release some toxic fumes. And I used to be so blasé about my health when it comes to constructing cosplay that I don't think I need any more chances. So I've got my respirator on and the window wide open. Anyway, with the pipe softened up, I'm going to flatten this area here so that I've got a nice flat surface that I can drill through to attach to the hinges. We're going to create like a second bend in the PVC pipe further up to create that first sort of wing joint.
Something I didn't consider is I've got myself a very long backpack. So there's all this like extra space down here. And when I try it on, this sort of buckles up so that this whole thing doesn't sit flat against my back.
So to correct this, I basically just chopped the bottom off the backpack and reattached those straps higher up. I just wish I thought of this before I attached the actual frame itself because it was really hard with these PVC pipes sticking out. I had a similar issue last time where I had to sew once I'd already attached the frame, so I guess I'm just not learning from my mistakes.
All right, harness is sitting pretty nicely here. Not too tight, not too loose, and even at the position it's in, this is sitting pretty secure. They're not like tilting off to one side. I think I got the hinge position just about right because the default position is still very much to the side, but it doesn't require much work on my part to have them going backwards. And hopefully once we get some strings and things going in there, that'll be even more pronounced. I'll see if I can show you what it looks like from the back without hitting my shelf. So hopefully you can see on the back panel here where everything's sitting is a final thing. For the next part, we're breaking out the whole gimmick of the last video. Fishing rods. So the main reason I wanted to try fishing rods last time was for a couple of reasons. For starters, they are super light. Secondly, they are really strong. Obviously, they're made to pull fish out of water, so they can take quite a lot of weight before they look at snapping or anything like that. And then of course, the fact that they flex means that essentially once I start loading up with some weight and moving around in them, that flex will allow for a bit of like a flapping motion like a wing. It also helps that they kind of screw apart in the middle for most designs that I've found, which does mean that you get this really lovely thin bit at the end, which so far has been mostly the right size for what I'm doing. And so far I've bought all of mine secondhand at op shops. One lady even sold me a couple of them for like $2 each because all of the strings were tangled and broken, but all I needed was the rod part, so it worked out fine for me. Now from the comments in the last video, it seems like a lot of you guys really couldn't find any secondhand fishing rods nearby. That makes sense. I guess like if you're in an area where there's not really many op shops around, or like maybe you're not near to water, so there's not many people having secondhand fishing rods. I found a really good alternative. This is a fiberglass cable rod, and these are all modular, so you can essentially like get a bunch of them and screw them together so you can get them exactly the length that you need. I bought mine on eBay. You could probably use Amazon, eBay, AliExpress. It seems to have relatively similar properties to fishing rods, so it might make a good alternative. So I gave up on the lovely gothic Mary Poppins outfit I had going on because it is far too cold for that. I'm back in a giant blanket hoodie. It's kind of dawning on me how much bigger this is going to be than the first ones. And that does mean a lot of extra weight on the wings, whether I like it or not. So I do kind of want to make sure this frame is going to be strong enough. So what I've done is I've got the fishing rod and I've doubled that up with some of those fiberglass cable rods. So now I'm really glad that I bought them. I cut off the little metal loopy things on the fishing rod that usually hold the fishing line, and I've literally just used some masking tape at some of these points just to hold the two rods like next to each other, and I can feel this is a lot stronger. There's still some flex there, but there is a lot of strength to this that wasn't there before. So my plan for attaching this into the wing frame is relatively straightforward. Because it's like a PVC pipe already, that is gonna go in there. I'm gonna chuck some hot glue into this little pipey bit at the length that I want, and then maybe I'll just chuck a little bit of tape around at the top here to hold that in place. So yeah, That's all there is to it.
I'm using some Warbler to reinforce one of the joints where the PVC piping split, and I'm going to use it to form a joint to join the fiberglass and fishing rod to a single fishing rod strip right at the top. Now you can kind of see what the whole base is going to look like on this one, right from the PVC piping towards the bottom, transitioning into the doubled up rod and fishing rod with my lovely Warbler joint, which looks kind of ugly, but hey, it's pretty strong. That's the important part. And then right to the tip of that fishing rod. Here is the wing frame laid up against my previous wings, just so you can see how much bigger I'm planning on going. And yes, this is a 5-meter wingspan. That's about 16 feet in freedom measurements.
So this is my polycell packing foam. This is the stuff that I used for all of my feathers last time. The main reason I've used this one is because it is super light and it's relatively rigid for how light it is. Like, it holds its shape really well. Couple of major downsides. For one, it's super translucent, as you can see, just because it is so thin, which meant I had to spray it a lot on both sides and double it up in order for it to be like opaque enough to use on my wings. This is heavy. So this is the same stuff, but it's 3 millimeters thick instead of 1 millimeter thick. So it's triple the width of this one. It's heavier as well. This was also a giant nightmare to get into my car. Like, once I went to the packing place and saw this giant beast, I genuinely thought I was gonna have to like hire a van or something like that. And I was panicking, being like, oh my God, what have I done? Which is a thing that I say a lot in cosplay, funnily enough. So you can see that this one still has like some transparency, but for Husk, I'm gonna have to like spray paint the wings with like reds and grays and blacks anyway. So I'm not too fussed about that. And in terms of strength, like, I can get a really large feather with this and it's not gonna flop around too much. Like, it's gonna hold its shape pretty well. All right, did a test run for some of the spray paints I'm gonna be using, and it seems to be working quite well. The black plastic down here doesn't seem to be like flaking off at all, which was one of the main problems I was having with some of the previous spray paint. So that's Plastidip. It seems to have soaked in there pretty well. It's flexible. If I do like a little bit of a scrunch and unscrunch, for now, there's no like cracks forming in that. So that's a good start. This red spray paint that I'm using is the Rust-Oleum paint and primer in one in, I think it's gloss apple red. And I have found where a lot of really cheap spray paint flake and rub off really easily. The Rust-Oleum, it costs like 4 times the price, but you do get your money's worth out of it. It seems to be staying really well. It doesn't feel sticky. It's not rubbing off easily. I'm just gonna try a quick scrunch test with this one. Okay, so even the good stuff isn't going to survive a full scrunch. That being said, this was literally just like a super close spray paint in a really thick layer with nothing underneath it. Whereas over here, that is the Rust-Oleum over the top of some black Plastidip in a really thin layer. And this seems to be working quite well for the scrunch test. Like, there's not much like paint flaking coming off there. So I think that's going to be the way to go when it comes to painting these. But I don't have to worry about that for now. That doesn't work as well when there's not enough weight to it. For now, the next step is just cutting out an absolute ton of feathers. And I mean like so many. However many you think you need, cut out 10 times that amount. Trust me on this one.
To cut out the feathers, I'm starting from the big ones and working my way down. And some of these large ones, I couldn't even fit them on my desk. They were going to be so big. I also mostly used a hobby knife last time, but I think with the thicker foam, it just seemed to work way better with scissors for this one. As well as the feathers, I also used some 1mm foam to cut out this little shape here, just to use as a guide for when I lay down the feathers. Now, I wanted to make sure I was happy with the length and shape and amount of feathers that I had, so I wanted to lay these all out on a wing before I started painting them.
Okay, I have enough feathers cut out on here and like laid out on the wing frame, just so I can kind of visualize it and see that I have enough feathers basically, and I can calculate how many I need and what different sizes just using this now. This row right down the bottom of the wing, the really large feathers here, I'm just going to call that row 1, and then row 2 going up to this one at the top here. So row 1, I only need 2 sets of that, one for one wing, one for the other, because I can have those double-sided so they'll be painted on both sides. For row 2 and up, I need 4 sets of these because I'm going to have this one and then a mirrored row on the other side of the wing, and then 2 more for the other side of the wing, and then so on and so forth for these other ones, right? So that's a ton of feathers. So for the first and second row, row, I've got these ones all labeled so that when I take these off and paint them, and I just leave like the very top here unpainted, I can still see where this goes on the wing, kind of like putting together a puzzle piece.
Just before I'm painting them, I'm cutting a couple of notches out of some of the feathers. This is just for the purpose of giving it like a slightly more feathery texture. I'm not going overboard because his feathers are supposed to look quite smooth and I still want them to maintain a bit of that cartoony look. Alright, starting on the monumental task of painting these. Basically, I'm laying all of them out in my garage over a drop sheet, as many as I can fit on the floor space at once. All of these are getting a thin layer of black Plastidip. This stuff is really toxic, so even with the garage door wide open, I am still wearing a respirator. Once that first layer is fully dry, half of them are getting sprayed with this sort of dark grey color, and the other half are getting the glossy red coat. I think there was around 8 rounds of feathers total, not including their individual coats, just because I only have so much garage space to work with. As a last layer on these ones, I'm just using a very light spray of black right around the rim of each of the feathers to kind of give it a little bit of shading. But the really big feathers in row 1, they were double-sided, so they had grey on one side, red on the other.
Good morning, everyone. Today is the day, and by that I mean today's the day where I finally glue all of those feathers onto the wings and hope that everything actually works. Because at this stage, I think I've been spray painting the feathers for about 5 days or something like that, and I am so sick of the garage and spray paint, and so I'm looking forward to having the wings done. And if it doesn't work from here for whatever reason, I'm going to cry a lot because that's a lot of time that I spent spray painting those wings. Anyway, for glue, last time I used kind of like a generic quick dry adhesive and it functioned fine, like it worked. There are definitely a couple of sections where I can tell if I tugged on them or caught the feathers, it might actually pull off. This time I wanted to make sure I tried every option. So here's my little thing that I prepared earlier. This is my little glue testing area. So we've got the B7000, which works fine, but I can tell like, well, okay, you know what? I take it back. That came off without any real pressure. Gorilla Glue, also not great. Elmer's glue, not working. Tacky Craft glue actually worked. I swear that wasn't a bit. I thought that had worked quite well, but you know. Okay, this is the quick dry adhesive, and like, I'm tugging on that a fair bit. I feel like if I wanted to, I could, yeah, so like I can pull that off, but you would have to very purposefully pull that off to get that off. Contact cement actually works really well. So this is just your standard contact adhesive. And this was like not really using it properly. And I tried to like rip it off the underside. And for the most part, I've actually pulled up the foam before I pulled up the actual thing. I can still pull it off though. Contact cement used properly. So like one side, the other side, wait till it gets tacky, stick them together. Still not great. And that's like the strongest glue there is. Okay, but I saved the best to last, right? I didn't even label this one. That's hot glue. Hot glue is not usually the first thing you think of when you're gluing foam. And it bonded really well. Like, seriously well. That's ripped the actual foam before it's ripped the glue. Never in my life would I think that I would see the day where hot glue works better than contact cement. But I'm really happy about that because that means I can use this inside without having to sit and scrabble around in my driveway with a freaking respirator on. So I'm incredibly pleased about that. The weird thing about this though is it did also melt through the foam a little bit. So somehow it worked really well and melted it. So I think what I'm gonna have to do is I'm gonna have to put down several like layers and then maybe like some poplin or something and then use the hot glue. So that way if I accidentally use slightly too much and it starts to melt all the way through the foam like base that I'm gluing it to, it'll still like, I'm not gonna just burn holes through my wings constantly. It's gonna be a balancing act the whole time between using just enough to get it glued down, not enough to melt through the foam.
So because I don't want to lose my bond, I am putting down several sheets of poplin here. This is basically like last resort if it melts through the other sheets of foam that I'm going to have on top of this. And then using the little numbers that I had labeled on all of my feathers for this row, I can put each piece in the right spot like a jigsaw puzzle.
Okay, so first 3 feathers done. So far so good. I haven't really done like too much in the way of errors. These first bits, I think I just put way too much glue on. You can see it did melt through the bottom layer, so I'm glad I had the poplin underneath. underneath. But I have found that like after a couple of goes, if I do quite a quick sweep of the glue as I go to stick it down, it doesn't manage to melt through there, and I've still got like a nice decent grip on there. I've got this one held exactly where it needs to be. I'm gonna lift up, I'm gonna do a super quick sweep across there and then straight down. Once this bit here is in place, I can lift up here and do like a quick sweep on the edge of this feather, glue that one down so that these two sides here hold together really well.
All right, that is row 1 down. I am gonna just pull this off so it's not stuck to any of the poplin or extra foam below. We're gonna turn this round and make sure it's looking okay from the other side as well. And since we're over here and already have the base feathers glued down, I'm just gonna trim away any of this base sheet that I no longer need. Time to start row 2. You know the drill by now. Lay out all the feathers, glue them down once you're happy with the position. It was genuinely so satisfying to do this part, like it just came together so fast compared to the days and days I spent painting these feathers.
In case you can't see in the other footage, I'm not gluing all the way down the edges on this second row to the row below because we don't really want a full flat piece. You kind of want to leave like just the glue down the center and then leave these edges raising up a little bit so it looks more like feathers laying on top of each other rather than a flat piece.
Row 3 and 4 went exactly the same. You can see that I'm sort of layering them a little bit denser towards the top. Once I was happy with the grey side, we're turning these ones around and working on the red side. I left their feathers a little bit more sparse on this side just because these are going to be the back of the wings. I don't need them to be as full, and anywhere we can reduce weight is going to be a good thing.
All right, most of the layers of both the red and grey side are now done, and I've still got like heaps of spare feathers here, like especially of the red, and we do still have like a row or two of very small feathers that I'm going to need to put at the top here to sort of finish these off. But I think before I do that, I need to actually attach these to the frame. While I was gluing down the red edges here right on this top wing, I've purposefully glued like top and bottom edge and left it like through the middle. So in theory, I should be able to at least like slide this little bit here in between these feathers. All right, so far so good. That worked better than expected, I guess.
I've got some super light but super strong cotton voile here. I'm just gonna cut some wing size strips of this one. Put a pin in that. I'll explain what this is for later on.
All right, I'm backtracking for just a second. I was just about to go and do a thing with the sleeve and experiment with like how to attach them. And then I realized like, let me just check that the weight like is actually holding up as is before I go trying to do that. And I've just got it held with a bit of masking tape right now, but it's not quite holding up. You can see like it's actually all in this middle section here. This bit that's not holding the weight. I think really the only way I'm going to be able to stabilize this is by ditching the flexibility here and just going for another rigid PVC rod and like just attaching it through the middle here with like a coupling of some sort. Sorry if the lighting in here is a little bit terrible right now. My nice ring light is out in the lounge room where my wings are, and I just don't feel like unplugging it and bringing it back in here. So you'll deal for now. But I did go to Bunnings and get some more PVC pipe. I also had a thought while I was there, since I'm changing up the wing frame anyway, I got these things, which are basically like just little coupling ends for PVC piping. I don't know what you call them exactly, but because these two are threaded, they screw together. And what that means is I can basically have two different sections of PVC pipe rather than one long one in the middle of the wing. And that basically means that the wing frame itself can be modular. I can literally have it come apart in a couple of pieces, which is going to make it way easier to transport it and then screw it together when I get to wherever I'm going, basically. I also got some of these, which I think are called elbows. This is like a 45-degree elbow where the PVC pipe is going to basically go up and then meet the wingtip coming out here. I'm going to have that elbow joint sitting on there, and then the fiberglass rod will come out of that. Since I'm not having like a fiberglass rod and then a fiberglass rod, I don't really need to worry about the wobbler joint. This should be a little bit stronger in theory. I've also made a bunch of these, which is literally just a strip of fabric with some Velcro either side, and the width in between these two pieces is exactly long enough to wrap around the PVC pipe, so that if I have one of these ends glued to the wing wing itself and I want to attach it onto the frame, I can basically put the wing in place and then wrap that around the PVC, Velcro it down, and that wing is now attached to the frame. And then when I want to take it off again, super easy, I can just unvelcro it. Is that a word? Unvelcro? Develcro?
So we've pulled out the fishing rods. I am gluing and hammering on this coupling just to make sure it's secure. I'm going to tape this in place just so that while the glue dries, I don't accidentally knock it or pull it off. And the wing tip is still going to be that fishing rod. So once that's all attached, I am going to put a pilot hole through the back here. That's going to be where the fishing rod threads through. And then I'm going to use some hot glue to sort of reinforce that in place and like fill up that pipe so that that fishing rod is not going to go anywhere. All right, so those little Velcro sleeves, I'm putting those around the piping now just to get it in place. Then applying a nice generous bit of hot glue on the underside of that and pressing it down into the wing.
Okay. Oh man, it's not heavy, but there is bulk to it. God, look at how gigantic this is. All right, well, this is fine here, but like I'm holding it up here. I need to see if these joints here will actually give it to me. So if I hold this, yeah, it is a little bit too saggy. So essentially from here down, that's now sitting wonderfully. It's just this joint here, which I had a feeling I would have to reinforce that anyway, because if I can reinforce that, then everything else kind of stays in place where it needs to be.
So back to the drawing board to tweak the frame yet again. I have a much thicker piece of PVC pipe this time that I am heating up and flattening one end of once again. This time I'm not putting any bend in there. So we're going to again drill some holes in here and attach these to the hinges instead. I've drilled some massive pilot holes on the other end here and I'm just slowly widening these up with a heat gun so that I can basically shove a PVC pipe which is the size of the rest of the wing through here so that we have a very secure way to hold the rest of the wing in place. And later on, I did put a bolt straight through that joint from the side here to reinforce it.
I don't know how many times exactly I've rejigged the base in some way. I think it's at least 3 or 4 times, so I'm just really hoping that this is it. It is the most reinforced it's ever been now, with the thicker PVC piping and only really relying on the fiberglass rods for the very ends. Okay, that's good. That's good, but I'm holding it up by here right now. So if I hold it by there, I think we got it. Obviously, the fact that we've had to use PVC piping for this section and this section does mean you don't get as much flexibility and like full-on waving motion that we got with the loop wings. But like, I'm okay with that payoff here because these are just absolutely gigantic. All right, so seeing these finally like working and on a frame, it's given me like a renewed sense of purpose, like a second wind. So I'm gonna get going and try and fill out the rest of the shape, get this reattached to this base bit here. Yeah.
Okay, so we're using a lot of the smaller feathers now to cover up where this Velcro is. And the trick here is to glue it like above the wing here and on the Velcro, but not in that section below the wing, which is where all the other feathers are. That way, where these feathers are, I can still pull the Velcro up off the rest of the wing. I hope that still makes sense. If it doesn't, you'll see how it works in a moment. So now you can see with the Velcro on, it's fully hidden, but if you just pull underneath those feathers, that whole Velcro section there comes up, which will allow me to take the wing off the frame. Back on the gray side, Husk has got like a red line on the top of his wing visible from the front, so of course that means we're going to fill out the top here with some red feathers.
So far so good. Weight-wise doesn't feel too bad. Where is my little loop? There's my little loop. All right, they seem to be holding actually pretty perfectly. And they're moving nicely on the hinges. All right, now comes the fun part. I need to try and turn these around and see if I can actually put them on now. Okay, God, these are so massive. Okay, I think what I need to do is I need to hold this back panel against my back so it doesn't fall forwards. There we go. All right, let me tighten these. You know what I might need to do? I might need to add a strap around my waist from the backpack. So do you guys remember way back at the start of the video where I made this beautiful, nice little compact wing base? Neither do I. It's useless. I tried to correct it by putting some straps on the bottom. It's not gonna happen. I tried to tweak it a bunch of ways. It's just not gonna take the weight like I thought it was. And it wasn't even the problem of the actual things. It was just having the straps on me, not happening. So I made a new one. And that is to say I angry crafted a new one. I literally angry drove back to Bunnings, got 2 new placemats. I've made this one, I've kept this one bigger, so I haven't cut it in half. I've angry attached some new stainless steel hinges so that they will definitely be able to take the the weight no matter what, because I don't want to have any more issues trying to take the weight of these damn ridiculous massive wings. And I also angry sewed a big, really heavy duty strap and a clip. That's gonna go around my waist. And yes, I was so impatient, I didn't want to change my bobbin and thread to black. That is how much of an angry crafting I'm doing. Also, I drilled a hole in my table because I was too impatient to like put down a proper mat when I was drilling holes in the new placemat. Yet another mark of shame on my lovely white office table that gets a little bit less white and lovely with every crafting project. All right, quick rundown of the new and improved wing backpack base thing. Straps work same as before. They don't come quite as far up under my underarms this time because I've got the longer board at the back. I have a super heavy duty nylon webbing strap around my waist. I've got a side release buckle for this one, and that is fully adjustable so I can put it on nice and loose and then tighten it up as much as I need to around the waist. Hopefully this will be hidden under some sort of vest. Worry about that part later. The important thing is getting the wings to stay secure. Just to show you what it looks like from the back. So it's kind of the same sort of thing. It's just larger, it's longer, so hopefully that'll give me more security. This is feeling like super secure. This is like when you go overnight hiking kind of thing. If I attach the wings and they're still moving around at this point, I think I would just call it quits. But this is about as heavy duty as it gets, so I'm just gonna finish painting the wings and then see how it all looks together.
Now this wing is currently attached to the backpack area, and you can see on the left there, I actually did glue a bunch of feathers over the back panel to kind of disguise it a little bit.
I've got a little printout here for reference for where Husk's wings need to have like the black lines. For the lines themselves, I am gonna freehand that, and that's because I do kind of want those slightly blurred edges. I just think they look cooler that way. The dots I'm going to come back to at a later stage, but let's just get the stripes done and worry about the rest later. Alright guys, we are on the home stretch for these wings. Pretty much the only detail left is to add in the dots along some of the stripes. Now I thought about doing this as like little stencils and spray painting them on, and then decided that was an absolutely terrible idea because if I stuff that up or like accidentally spray around outside of that, there's so much that I have to fix up for that. So this is how I'm going to do the dots. Basically, I have white spray paint down one side, red on the other. This is the 1mm foam, so it's really, really thin. And my plan is basically just cut out a bunch of circles and glue them onto the wings in the places I want them. That way I don't have to worry about paint spillage. I can mark out the positioning first and have a look at everything, make sure I'm happy with it before I glue it down.
I think this was definitely the right call for how to do this. I just didn't trust myself with the stencil, and being able to like position them until I was happy with their exact spacing was just so valuable. I used my trusty quick dry adhesive to glue these ones down, just because I didn't trust the hot glue not to melt through the extra thin foam. Looking at the dots, they looked quite flat glued onto the wings that otherwise had a lot of shading going on, so I went back in with some acrylic black paint and did some dry brushing to try and blend those dots in, and I think this worked beautifully. I also touched up some of the edges of the feathers, particularly where some of the white foam was showing through.
I thought doing this segment down here on the floor would be like a fun way to show the scale of like the wings next to a human. It's really uncomfortable down here, so I'm going to try and keep this short. But anyway, the painting is all done. It's all dry. I have sprayed down all of the wings on both sides with like a matte varnish to try and seal in the paint. I've also glued some of this faux fur just to the very top of the shoulders here. I'm just going to help hide some of the straps, and Husk has got furry shoulders anyway, so it kind of goes together. I'm going to put these on for one last test drive, make sure everything's working. You guys aren't going to see that though. I'm going to wait for the big reveal for you. But for you guys, once I've edited this video, it'll be like 20 seconds away, so just hold tight for a moment. So I knew I was never going to be able to get like decent photos or video footage of these wings by myself. Let's be honest, with the size of them, they're just a bit beyond a self-portrait. So I've organized a photo shoot with Keyframes Photography, who I've worked with a bunch of times before, and I always love their work. Anyway, let me show you how it all turned out.
You can get an idea of scale with these in the fact that they take up the full alleyway from side to side. The fact that I made the frame and wings disassemblable came in clutch, because without it, I would not have been able to fit these in my car.
And I should probably stop my commentary, otherwise they might smile too much.
right now watching this footage back, even before I've got any of the final photos from Keyframes, but just seeing the impact and just the general size and scale of these wings and how they move, well, I think it just reminded me why it is that I keep choosing to do these incredibly uncomfortable, impractical cosplays. Because despite the frustration and constant changes you have to make, and stress and discomfort at wearing them, and all of the time that it takes up, honestly, the joy of creation and like the sense of triumph I get from overcoming a really difficult project, I guess it all just makes it feel worth it in the end. And despite my struggles, all of the potential that this has, and thinking about other creators taking these concepts and making them even better again, I don't know, nothing really compares to that feeling. I'm sorry if it sounds corny or melodramatic, but that's just genuinely how I feel and why I keep doing cosplay. That being said, I don't think I'm taking these wings to a convention anytime soon. I'll stick with making a smaller pair for that. And between the fawn legs and this project, I think I want to work on something smaller for a bit.
Let's go.
Okay, we're going.
So, this whole project was absolutely an adventure and a half. I gotta be honest guys, I expected these wings to take like a week because in my head, I'd done them before. This seems to be a bad habit of mine to just grossly underestimate how long things are gonna take. But I didn't factor in, firstly, the amount of extra painting that the wings would take next to the loop ones, because the loop were already mostly white, whereas these are reds and grays and dotted and striped, and I wanted all that extra shading. But my biggest mistake was dealing with the weight. And what I forgot to factor in is that when you increase something's size, the weight increases a lot more. So if you double the size of the wings, the weight doesn't double, it like quadruples or something. So not only is all of the foam 3 times thicker because I went with the thicker foam, which means that it's a lot heavier just on its own, but then you've got the added size of the wings increasing the weight. And then you have the tricky factor where I had to keep adding in stronger elements, like swapping out some of the fiberglass fishing rods for PVC piping, which of course is also increasing the weight, and then having to swap the thinner PVC piping towards the bottom for much thicker, larger pieces, which are also heavier, and then in turn having to change up the base backpack to then incorporate all of that extra weight. So all of those factors just kept adding up until it was just way heavier than the original pair that I made for Loot. And that plus the fact that they are just so much larger, they are a really cumbersome set of wings. I regret nothing. They look incredible, they are so massive, and I achieved what I set out to achieve. But hey, if you're really good at like engineering or something, please let me know in the comments if you have any suggestions for like how I could improve this design, or if you have any questions about stuff in this video, also comment them below, or just tell me about your favorite Hazbin Hotel character. And if you want to know more about how I did some of the other elements in the final cosplay, like the claws, tail, ears, and hat, they will be in a future video, hopefully. And I also plan to make for Husk some ears that actually move like cat's ears with that full movement. I haven't done that yet, so if it doesn't work, they won't be in the video, but I think I can make it happen. We'll see. Thank you all so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please click the like button, subscribe, ring the bell, all those YouTubey things that tell the algorithm robots that you like my weird stuff. A massive thank you to Pocket Styler for sponsoring this one. Please click the link in the description below to get Pocket Styler for yourself. And a huge thank you to my ultimate supporters. So these are my top dog supporters on Patreon: Artemis, Dakota, Ender, Fluky, and Rakishan, Residual Images, Robert Mischief, Tamara, Tim, and Yuri. You guys are absolutely amazing. And thank you as well to some of my other amazing patrons whose names are appearing on screen. Now, if you want to be as cool and amazing as these lovely folk, come and join us on Patreon. I post tons of previews, work in progress. There's some physical goodies like letters, stickers, and mugs. And it's the best way to support me if you want to keep seeing weird and wonderful projects from me. But even if you can't join in on Patreon, being here and watching, liking, subscribing, sharing with your mom, sharing with your boss are amazing ways to support me. So thank you so much. And I will see you in the next video. Bye!